There is one interesting problem when you look back in time and watch a story that was popular in an older era, especially when that story is still popular in the present day. And that problem is that you will see nothing but cliché tropes, overused themes, and tried and true plot lines. You will wonder how this common stereotype of a story got popular in the first place, and then you will realize, oh, that's because this is one of the first. Of course, because something is old does not automatically make it good. And we'll get to that. When you have a series as historic as this one, you can't expect constant perfection. You need things to be a bit bizarre from time to time. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a combination of elements that are amazingly styled, amazingly predictable, but also amazingly enjoyable. Most of the time. While the series is lengthy, currently airing its 4th part right now, I wanted to look at the first 2 parts, where our story first began. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the 2012 anime directed by Kenichi Suzuki, produced by David Production, and based off the original manga by Hirohiko Araki. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, specifically Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. Let's jam. Let us assume for a moment that you have never heard of JoJo before. It's difficult, I know, but we need to think like that in order to answer an obvious question. How would you describe JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to a person? Do you talk about the overly muscled men, the weird-ass powers, the magical guardians, though that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. The title is actually the best description that this series could ever hope to have. This show, for lack of a better description, is truly bizarre. JoJo is this mishmash of 80s culture, male bravado, and the most common tropes that have existed and shown in anime since the beginning of time. It's filled with constant battles that mean life or death, but they are always fought in almost the same way. Allow me to demonstrate the usual order of operations for these early JoJo battles. I attack you with this super awesome technique! Haha, that's what I wanted you to do, so I cancel your technique with a technique of my own! I figured you'd try that, which is why I did this other thing before the fight even began. Next you'll say, that's impossible. That's impossible! It wasn't the originator for a lot of these tropes and style of battle, but it sure as hell refined it. You may notice that I'm starting with the beginning of this series, and not just talking about it as a whole. The series is still airing, but JoJo is laid out such that almost every arc is a story unto itself. There are connections between them, sure, but you don't necessarily need to have watched all of them to get an understanding for what JoJo is. Now, some people might recommend that you skip some of it, probably because Phantom Blood is terrible. Oh no, there I go, sprouting my opinion again. But yes, I personally find the initial arc of the JoJo canon terrible. Phantom Blood is 9 episodes that tells us the story of the OG JoJo, Jonathan Joestar. And I hope you're okay with his name, by the way, because shit, you ain't seen nothing yet. Jonathan gets a new adopted brother, Dio, who the show wants you to know is evil incarnate. There is nothing redeemable about his character at all, and heck, he even kicks a puppy. A puppy! So to make a long story short, Dio gets a hold of a stone mask that turns him into an immortal vampire. JoJo then needs to learn how to use the mystical martial arts powers of Sunny D to vanquish Dio and save the world, all the while fighting minions named after members of Led Zeppelin and accompanied by a mortal sidekick named REO Speedwagon. Subtlety is not something the writer of this series possesses. But Phantom Blood is just a mess. It has by far the most uninteresting JoJo in the entire series. Note that I am only up to Diamond is Unbreakable because I don't read manga. The motivation for our 2 characters fighting to the death is horrendous. The pacing of this arc is insanity. I realize that in 9 episodes they cover 5 volumes of manga, which is impressive, but not as impressive just how slow it feels. Despite blitzing through this arc like nothing, the entire thing feels like it's dragging. So if I told someone to watch JoJo because I enjoyed it, which I did, and they told me that they stopped before getting to Battle Tendency, I would not be surprised. Disappointed, but not surprised. Normally, I am of the mind that if a show doesn't grab you early on, then it's not worth the slog. Even just to get to the good bits, regardless of how rewarding they might be. It's one of the reasons why I've never gotten to long shows that need me to watch 30 to 50 episodes before it gets good. But this is one of the situations where I feel that I can make an exception, because skipping Phantom Blood will have little effect on your enjoyment. What do you miss if you skip Phantom Blood? Well, if you care about such things, you miss the option to start everything from the beginning, you miss the early explanations about the Ripple Power or Hamon, depending on if you're watching sub or dub. You miss Dio's introduction, though as the Lex Luthor of the franchise, his best bits are still to come, and, well, all of that can be explained to you really quickly. You don't need to spend 3 hours on it. Hell, there's even a re-edited recap episode that covers all of it in just over 100 minutes. So you have options. Next up is the far better part to this first season of episodes. It's called Battle Tendency, aka the part where the drugs kick in. It's the story of Jonathan's grandson, Joseph, and his battle against the Pillarmen. These are beings from thousands of years ago who got sealed away until the German Nazis come along. Because Nazis make everything better. These Pillarmen were also the creators of the stone masks, like the one that turned Dio into a vampire back into the previous arc. Why is Battle Tendency better? This can be summed up with one thing. Joseph Joestar is a fucking boss. He comes off, at times, as a dim-witted, naive punk of a man. One who doesn't really have a reason or desire to fight, but that changes right quick. His quirky attitude and fighting style is both unique and fucking amazing. He is a character that is more tactician than brawny fighter. He is a master at using both his environment and his opponent to achieve victory, even if that victory is just the chance to run away and fight another day. He is a refreshing change to a battle formula that previously was just, if I punch them harder, I'll win. During this arc, Joseph's wits get challenged by a slew of opponents with greater and greater intensity. This is the start of a gradual scale that these stories love to use. You start off with an impossible to defeat threat, i.e. Dio and his vampiric powers. Then you upgrade to beings that created said powers, which downgrades the creatures of Dio's power to just mere cannon fodder. Only then for these new beings to be upstaged by an even greater villain later on. Everything the hero faces is more powerful than the last. They usually only win by the skin of their teeth, only to face head-on into the next enemy who is quite a bit more powerful than the last. I mentioned that the series is predictable because it has this formula down to a T, but it does so well from this point on that it hardly matters. Style is a word that many people, myself included, would use to describe this series. The color palette alone changes from scene to scene. Hell, sometimes from cut to cut. The framing is usually off-kilter from center. The poses, though not as outrageous as later parts in the series, are still ridiculous. But there is so much charm here, especially from Joseph, so that the whole ride feels like an intense roller coaster without breaks. There are problems with this formula, though, namely the running commentary. There's this habit of having a character, like Speedwagon, to serve as a narrator to the action. It's the opposite of show don't tell. But when characters are fighting to the death, commentary makes it feel less like a brawl and more like a calm game of chess. Every detail of the fight gets expanded upon and explained, despite that anime is visual storytelling and we should just be able to tell what's going on with our eyes. The intensity and ferocity of the battle can still be felt, but the payoff feels disjointed. This first section of JoJo's readaptation is a product of its time. The entire story from these two arcs was written before I was even born. Even with David Productions' phenomenal effort, it still feels old at times. The series is not a masterpiece, but it is a part of history, and as an entertaining romp, few could serve you better. If you haven't watched it yet, you should. I stand by my thoughts on the initial arc, though. Either skip it or watch the recap. Unless, of course, you want to be able to see everything from the beginning. Otherwise, it takes far too long to really get a feel for what JoJo is. Plus, Battle Tendency is just a stupid amount of fun. Though, shit doesn't get truly real until Stardust Crusaders, but that's for another time. At the time of this video, JoJo has been licensed by Warner Brothers and is available for streaming in sub over on Crunchyroll, links in the description. The dub is quite good, though I'm wary about recommending it because the DVD release is the only way you can watch it. And that release uses dub titles and not subtitles for the Japanese track. Though at present, it is the only way to watch the dub, so I'm gonna leave that choice for you. Now, for alternate anime recommendations, if you can handle 80s animation, then as a piece of history, I recommend that you check out some of Fist of the North Star. It's It's from the same era story-wise, and the action is of the same style, and many of the character designs share similar traits. Though, admittedly, it just doesn't have the same flair as JoJo. Second recommendation goes to Hunter x Hunter. It's another favorite shonen of mine, despite being fairly long. But all in all, it is worth the length, as the story and the characters makes the journey worth the watch. Finally, I would like to thank all my patrons, including Ludika Adachi, Calhoun Boy, Victor Ekmark, Nikolai Gray, Joshua Garcia, and Jocelyn Atkins, without which I would not be able to produce these videos to the same extent that I would like. And that's it for me. Thank you for watching, gentle viewers, and until next time, stay frosty.